Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Thursday, December 11th, 2025. I'm Errol Lewis. Some New York City businesses sound like they're beginning to jump on Zohran Mamdani's bandwagon when it comes to childcare. The mayor-elect today met with business leaders who told him about benefits that they already provide to parents, while also discussing how those benefits might be expanded. The mayor-elect also seems prepared to create a new position in his administration that will be dedicated exclusively to childcare. Our State House reporter Bernadette Hogan joins me now with tonight's top story. Good evening, Bern.
Good evening, Errol. And although some of these ideas that these business leaders have heard from Mamdani before he became the mayor-elect, and they might not have agreed with him, they now are really interested in being a part of the conversation because it will affect not only them, but their bottom line. Ahead of Zohran Mamdani's official debut as mayor on January 1st, businesses are assessing what child care assistance they already provide employees and are considering adding more incentives, especially if the city and state governments play ball and help them pay the bill.
We're seeing declining enrollment in our public schools. It's fundamentally reshaping the New York as we know it. And we have more and more business leaders that are increasingly talking about childcare as economic infrastructure.
Bank of America, Citibank, Pfizer, Warby Parker, Etsy, and several other top employers met Mamdani alongside Partnership for New York City CEO Catherine Wild early Thursday.
What I really appreciated about this meeting was a number of business leaders highlighting how when they invested in childcare in their own companies, they saw significant changes in their ability to retain the talent that they already have.
Mamdani's $6 billion campaign promise would require the city to pay for babies' care starting at 6 weeks old until they turn 5. But as of Thursday, his plan still has many gaps to fill.
So the specifics of how many families, how many centers, that's exactly what we're hard at work at right now over the course of this transition.
When asked why that key information is still absent, Mamdani.
I'm not yet the mayor, but I am hard at work at preparing this. And what it looks like, frankly, is first assessing the failures of our current approach that we have.
Later, Wild explained to New York One some conversations that are happening behind closed doors. Although child care tax credits are available on both the state and federal level, they're underutilized.
There's a whole comprehensive network of needs. It was suggested in our meeting that we may need a child care czar who is going to carry out the mayor's vision.
Sharing a new survey among 105 city businesses employing between 100 and 25,000 employees.
We found that employers are all over the map in terms of what they offer.
While a majority of companies reimburse parents for urgent or backup childcare needs, few house care facilities in or near the workplace. And the median cost of benefits per eligible employee, $370.
It's actually very, very few that offer deeply robust child care benefits. I'm talking about the ability for an employee to know, hey, if I take this job, I'm going to have free or very, very low-cost child care. That's an expensive, a hugely expensive benefit for a company to offer.
Mamdani has promised to pay for his ideas with the help of a new tax hike on the very businesses he's courting. One they oppose.
I don't think we need to entertain the possibility of cuts in order to fund an agenda like this. What I've spoken about is an openness to different revenue streams beyond the two that I've proposed.
On when the promises will turn into a reality.
He indicated that he will follow up with employers and try and make sure that we're getting something done that maximizes the private sector resources that are going into this, and then looking at where are the gaps that we need to fill with additional revenues.
So new taxes are not off the table, Errol, to pay for all of this.
Very interesting. And it sounds like the businesses are aware that having employees who have child care taken care of means that they'll be more productive, more likely to show up for work, more likely to stay with the company, and so on.
Right, and it really is an argument that if you do provide those wraparound assistance benefits, right, then it helps out the business at the end of the day if they already have a good employee, and then they don't have to go out and look for somebody every time a woman has a baby, you know, and then can't come back because they don't deem it worth it. The other thing that's interesting that they're looking at is building out the child care centers that are already in existence, but then seeing how they can support at-home care, whether it's a family member, the parent themselves that are assisting. And that model, speaking to Kathy Wild, kind of originates with this idea of smaller part-time micro sellers, like the company Etsy, for example, that is that platform that connects part-time sellers, and trying to figure out if the company can help advocate for those people, which I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, there's a family daycare used to be a staple, and it was one of the sort of features that the government was sort of trying to get its hands around. The de Blasio administration would talk about it. I don't know if they did very much with it. And now here we are, perhaps it'll be part of the puzzle.
Right, and I mean, either way, they're seeing this crisis that people are leaving the city before they're even making the decision to send their kids to school, because they realize it's not going to be worth it to commute to send my kid. It's going to cost so much money. Look, I went to private Catholic school in New York City. I went to kindergarten that was public school, but then our tuition was $3,000 annually. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks very much, Bernadette. In other news tonight, Mayor-elect Mamdani spoke about Brad Lander's run for Congress one day after endorsing his congressional bid in an attempt to unseat Representative Dan Goldman. While answering questions at the daycare center today, Mamdani also called Lander a trusted ally who leads with sincerity. Our Dan Rivoli was there and joins us with the details. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Errol. So Lander launches this campaign already with the endorsement of Mamdani. And today, speaking with reporters, he not only called Lander an ally, but also a friend and a partner. Now, Lander and Goldman are both progressive, but Lander is trying to get support from the socialist wing of the Democratic Party. As I mentioned, Zohran Mamdani, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, as well as Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, Mamdani's endorsement of Lander does put him at odds with his comrades in the New York City DSA. The DSA endorsed one of its own members to run in this district, City Councilwoman Alexa Aviles of Brooklyn. But once Lander entered the race, she put out a statement declining to jump in to avoid a split in the left-wing vote. But Mamdani was asked about endorsing a candidate who is not a member of the New York City DSA, and that endorsement also led to some grousing on social media from socialists. But Mamdani said that the DSA is still his political home.
It continues to be my political home. I continue to be proud to be a member, like thousands of other New Yorkers, of New York City DSA. And I have always spoken about my belonging to New York City DSA began because of the focus on transforming the lives of working class New Yorkers and their ability to afford to live in this city.
Why don't you want the DSA candidates to run in those primaries?
That's not something that I have said. I have weighed in specifically in endorsing Brad Lander, who is the candidate that is challenging the incumbent in that race.
The day Lander announced his campaign, I reached out to the New York City DSA to see if they would restart the endorsement process and formally endorse Lander. Instead, I got a statement back praising Aviles, saying her decision not to run would let them consolidate around the ultimate goal of defeating AIPAC, that is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Both Lander and Goldman are Jewish. Both have been critical of Israel's right-wing government, but Lander much more so here in New York. Errol.
So kind of a complicated timeline, but did the DSA even consider Lander before? Would this be an entirely new kind of a look that they'd be giving him if he appears to be the only candidate?
They would have to give it a new look. They have a very structured process on how they deliver endorsements. It's one Mamdani is intimately familiar with, not just as a member, but as you recall, he personally appeared at an endorsement meeting to stop a primary challenge against Hakeem Jeffries. And so that was my question to the DSA. Do you restart the process? Lander, as I mentioned, is not an official member of the DSA, but they can certainly endorse him, particularly because its membership is so against Dan Goldman.
Yeah, what is the objection to Dan Goldman? You mentioned AIPAC and money that he's taken from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. What else?
It's AIPAC in Israel. That is chief among them. He took some tough votes. For example, he voted to censure Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. He also voted in favor of sanctions for the International Criminal Court when that body issued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders, and those were seen as bad politics for a socialist. It is also corporate power. They are against corporate power. Goldman they see as a corporate Democrat.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. Also tonight, a grand jury has again declined to bring a new indictment against New York State Attorney General Letitia James, sources are telling the Associated Press. It is another blow to the Trump administration's Justice Department after the recent dismissal of earlier charges against James and against former FBI Director James Comey. The allegations against James are related to the purchase of a house in Norfolk, Virginia, where she has family. A judge threw out the original indictments against James and Comey last month, ruling that the prosecutor who presented evidence to the grand jury, Lindsay Halligan, was improperly, indeed illegally, appointed U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, President Trump looms large over the Republican primary in New York's race for governor between Elise Stefanik and Bruce Blakeman. We'll explain why. Also tonight, we have new details about the U.S. military seizure of an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. And later, industry experts say that New York is falling behind when it comes to technological infrastructure of city government. We will discuss how the incoming Mamdani administration can better utilize artificial intelligence. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost. And that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure. Why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of, they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Many prominent Republicans, including the leader of the state party, are weighing in on the race to secure the party's gubernatorial nomination, with Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman now challenging Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. But the country's top Republican, of course, that's President Trump, is not playing favorites, at least not publicly. Our Washington, D.C. reporter Shannon Ryan joins me now from inside the Capitol with the latest on what the president is saying about this race. Good evening, Shannon.
Good evening, Errol. Certainly a sticky spot for the president to be in. We know that these are people he's both called friends. They've publicly called themselves his allies. And in terms of what he said publicly on the record, we've heard little more than that out of him. He's declined to endorse either of them, singing their praises and saying that he hates to see them both pitted against one another. However, sources tell us behind closed doors, his messaging has been quite different.
A fireworks fight for New York's Republican gubernatorial nomination as Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman jumps into the ring against MAGA stalwart Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. President Donald Trump remains publicly neutral.
He's a friend, she's a friend. These are two great people running. In a way, I hate to see them running against each other. I hope they're not going to be damaging each other.
Sources tell New York One that Trump called Blakeman, saying he did not feel a win was likely. An interaction some painted as an attempt to dissuade Blakeman.
Have you talked to President Trump about your run?
Yes.
What did he say?
I don't disclose any conversations that I have in private with anybody, but especially President Trump. But I think his comments yesterday, he can speak for himself, and I think what he said yesterday is indicative of how he feels. He likes us both, and he respects us both.
Democratic incumbent Governor Kathy Hochul already leveraging the interaction in the largely liberal state.
I have no idea his motivation, but if he thinks they're great, that's another message in the campaign to think they're both beloved by Donald Trump, and you really want that a mega governor, and I think the answer will be a resounding no.
As concern grows over whether the matchup will harm Republicans, already underdogs in the state, New York GOP Chairman Ed Cox has publicly endorsed Stefanik. Stefanik's spokesperson called Blakeman an early Christmas present to Kathy Hochul, accusing him of working to blow the race for Republicans. Blakeman, holding his seat in purple Nassau County, says he's the best man for the job.
And I think my record proves that. So I'm not running against Elise Stefanik, who is a very bright woman, and she is a good legislator. I am running against Kathy Hochul.
And Errol, in terms of what we're seeing on the local level, you saw that statement from Ed Cox. He says about 75% of counties right now are supporting Stefanik. But in and around Nassau County, I will say that, you know, the support that we are also seeing for Blakeman is not negligible.
Okay, and Shannon, what kind of reaction are we seeing to the president's role in all of this among Democrats and Republicans here in New York?
You know, again, Errol, you go back to those numbers when you look at the counties, and right now it seems like largely Republicans are falling in line. Again, this is a very liberal state, one where Republicans do not want to be fractured.
All right, thanks very much, Shannon. New details are surfacing about the U.S. military seizure of a cargo ship carrying oil near Venezuela. President Donald Trump broke the news about it yesterday, and lawmakers remain divided, with some supporting it and others raising questions. Spectrum News national political reporter Taylor Populars has the latest in this report.
The dramatic video shows U.S. Coast Guard members being lowered onto an oil tanker by helicopter and taking control of the gigantic vessel Wednesday. It was from Venezuela, carrying 2 million barrels of oil.
The Department of Justice requested and was approved for a warrant to seize a vessel because it's a sanctioned shadow vessel.
White House officials say the ship was transporting sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran.
It was a successful operation directed by the president to ensure that we're pushing back on a regime that is systematically covering and flooding our country with deadly drugs and killing our next generation of Americans.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said a U.S. investigative team is now on the ship, conducting interviews and collecting evidence.
The vessel will go to a U.S. port, and the United States does intend to seize the oil.
It's the latest escalation by President Donald Trump against Venezuela. He's ordered strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats since September and has hinted at military strikes on land. The president said this Wednesday.
Other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
On Capitol Hill, a divide over the president not consulting Congress before the seizure.
I mean, these are war powers that the president is exercising, particularly if he's talking about land strikes in Venezuela. You can't go to war without the congressional war powers authorization.
Well, I think the president is operating with his authority. I'd certainly think that Congress should be a partner.
Venezuela's government said the ship seizure was, quote, blatant theft and international piracy. President Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism in the U.S. Reporting at the White House, Taylor Populars, Spectrum News.
It is time now for a break. Coming up, New York's top cannabis official has been pushed out by Governor Kathy Hochul. It is the latest hiccup for the state's legal marijuana industry. We'll explain why after a short break. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for Onstage.
Onstage is presented by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate your journey.
It's only a hike. It's only made possible by Spectrum Business connecting healthcare providers of all sizes. Like hospitals relying on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network with industry-leading reliability. Practices keeping patient data safe with advanced security. Pharmacies accessing records in the cloud without fail. It's tailored connectivity solutions built for life-changing moments. It's only a hike. It's only everything. Spectrum Business.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan. Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York One to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood, because our city never stops moving.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories, but first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Since its rollout nearly 3 years ago, New York's legal cannabis industry has been plagued by a variety of problems. Now, after an embarrassing legal setback, Governor Hochul has forced out the leader of the state's Office of Cannabis Management for the second time in less than 2 years. Our Bobby Kuza is here with the details. Good evening.
Good evening, Errol. And just when you thought things couldn't get any rockier for the cannabis industry, there's been this problem lately where some New York operators, legal operators, are sort of skirting the law by working with out-of-state operators because, you know, there are very strict regulations. Everything has to happen within New York State. So OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, tried to make a big enforcement action against some very high-profile companies. The case apparently fell apart, and Governor Hochul evidently was frustrated by this and took some action this week.
Last year, Governor Hochul promised changes at the state's Office of Cannabis Management, leading to the resignation of Chris Alexander, the agency's first executive director. This week, she forced out his replacement, Felicia A.B. Reed.
It's just one mess after the other.
Jeffrey Hoffman is a longtime cannabis attorney here in New York, which rolled out its first legal dispensary in 2022.
Through the whole history of the program, there's been all kinds of issues, and we're now going to be on our third executive director in the first 5 years of the program. That's not a very auspicious start.
The latest embarrassment is a high-profile legal case involving Long Island-based cannabis processor Omnium, which the state accused of illegally working with out-of-state brands, a growing problem in the New York industry. But the Office of Cannabis Management, also known as OCM, withdrew the case just as an administrative trial was set to begin for reasons that are still unclear. In a statement, Hochul said, too often the Office of Cannabis Management has stood in the way of the market realizing its potential, including most recently in the case of a pending compliance action that it has had to withdraw. As a result, I directed my office to take action, including requesting the resignation of the acting executive director.
It seems as if the state was finally going after these bad actors, and then all of a sudden the case evaporates.
Aaron Gittleman, a former spokesman for OCM, said while cannabis operators have suffered setbacks, consumers now have access to more than 500 legal dispensaries statewide.
If you're watching this at home and you're asking, how does this impact my ability to get stoned this weekend? It doesn't. If you're an operator in this space and you're wondering, okay, will we have some stability? Because there have been certain unforced errors in New York's cannabis market from day one.
State regulators have been tripped up by lawsuits and the proliferation of unlicensed smoke shops while making embarrassing regulatory missteps. Now Hochul must install new leadership for the second time in less than 2 years.
She thought she was fixing it and bringing, order to the chaos. And unfortunately, we just have significantly more chaos.
And Felicia Reed, who was ousted, was actually the interim executive director because she'd never been submitted formally to the state Senate for her nomination because she was just the interim replacement for Chris Alexander, who'd resigned last year. So the hope now is that Hochul will find somebody who's well qualified and will make them the permanent executive director, which of course needs Senate approval.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to be maybe a tough hire. Like, who wants to be the third person now to walk into this job when the last two went down in flames?
And, they need somebody who has experience in the field. And of course, the industry in New York didn't exist until a few years ago. So there's not that many people who know the ins and outs of the industry. So they got to find somebody who's respected and who's experienced. And there's not a lot of candidates who are on that list.
On the enforcement side, are there still a lot of illegal operators out there? Is that still a big part of what the office does?
I mean, at least to me, it doesn't seem like it's as visible of a problem as it used to be, and a lot of that was part of a city crackdown on the part of Mayor Adams. But you talk to people in the industry, and they say it is still out there. Some of these stores are just better now at concealing their operations than maybe they used to be.
All right, thanks very much, Bobby. It is time for a break. When we come back, I'll be joined by a leading tech advocate to talk about how Mayor-elect Mamdani can modernize city government through the use of artificial intelligence. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Burke.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
It's only a slice. It's only made possible by Spectrum, connecting businesses of all sizes, like small businesses, instantly serving up orders and inventory on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network, and factories, seamlessly connecting to farmers in the field with tailored solutions that always deliver. It's only a slice. It's only everything. Get your business free fiber-powered internet forever. Call to find out how.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. New York City is rightfully viewed as a leader in many different industries, including media, business, Broadway. But when it comes to technology, some advocates and industry insiders say that the 5 boroughs, the government in particular, is falling behind in using artificial intelligence to make city bureaucracy more efficient. My next guest published an op-ed in the New York Daily News recently that lays out a roadmap for city government modernization and suggests what the incoming Mamdani administration should do to move the city's technological infrastructure forward. Andrew Roche is the founder and CEO of Civic Hall, a center for tech innovation and education based here in Manhattan. He is also the chairman emeritus of the New York Tech Alliance, a nonprofit that supports the tech industry. Welcome to the program. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, Errol.
So this op-ed, you talk about areas where a lack of good technical foundations and good systems has real-world costs. I want our viewers to understand this is not some abstraction. And you cite the case of a mother who's applying for child care assistance, who has to print forms, travel across boroughs, and then wait weeks for confirmation when all of that can and should be done online in a matter of minutes.
Think about the small business owner and how long he has to wait for getting permits and filing for permits. What is the economic cost of that? Or for the elderly elderly couple who are applying for housing assistance, but the data of different agencies don't talk to each other, so they miss out on the opportunity. You know, this new mayor is the first digitally native mayor the city of New York has ever had. Which is an extraordinary opportunity because I believe our mayor-elect actually understands the power of technology in communication and in potentially creating efficiencies for the citizens of New York. But unfortunately, he's about to get into a 1998 Pontiac with bald tires, a leaky gas tank, brakes that don't work that great, a speedometer stuck on 5, and a steering wheel that comes off the column when he turns it. So he might be able to get himself into the 2005 Camry, but only if he really understands the structural issues that are preventing innovation from happening.
Well, this was a central promise of Eric Adams 4 years ago. I mean, I do remember that. He talked about creating, at a minimum, a portal. I forgot what he called it.
My City.
Yeah, so that people could sort of access all city services in one place. Even that was a heavy lift, and they didn't quite lift it. What have we learned from that?
Well, I think what we learned is that talking about technology by itself in a vacuum doesn't create innovation. It's these other structural issues. So, for example, the procurement rules lock out innovation for small startups to be able to sell to the city, or civil service rules or hiring practices prevent us from hiring the talent that the private sector easily hires to be able to work on these problems. And agencies hoard data, so there's no communication between those. The bureaucracy or the red tape associated with the rules of the way the city operates are still stuck in the analog era. And so they don't allow for a lot of the digital transformation that should occur. And this is why this is really an important, gnarly problem that affects every part of the city's infrastructure. And, you know, just think about the mayor's, you know, desire to create a mechanism to allow mental health professionals to be able to respond to the challenges that we have with our mental health crisis on the streets and not having the police to do it. You've got to build an infrastructure for that. It has to be tied to 311.
Sure.
It's not going to be done by simply waving a magic wand.
Yeah.
So this is going to require very careful thought and some time. But the mayor has to recognize the challenge that he's facing, and if he does recognize it, he has an extraordinary opportunity to reinvent New York.
You mentioned other cities seem to be ahead of New York or doing some interesting things that maybe we could learn from. Let's put it that way. Denver, I think you said, Boston, a couple of other places.
Greece, for example, has a My City portal where all government services are available through one app. You know, cities are using technology to speed traffic, AI to speed traffic, for example. You know, this is not rocket science in other parts of the world.
Right.
One of the challenges, I think, for New York is that it was a city that succeeded in the industrial age. And even though we have a tech sector that's now booming, the city of New York government has not caught up. And so now we have an opportunity to do it. And to save money, to deliver the promises that this mayor-elect is offering New York, it's time that the mayor, the controller, the speaker, and the public advocate come together to really look at what are the structural reasons why the bureaucracy doesn't allow innovation to take place.
Is this one of these rare occasions when what we actually need is a blue ribbon commission? Not to foist off the issue, but to sort of cut across different areas.
So my op-ed made the following recommendation, which is that the mayor should appoint a chief digital officer, a chief information officer, who reports directly to him, to the first deputy mayor, and to the Office of Management and Budget. And every other CIO and CTO in the city at all the agencies report to their commissioners and to the CDO or the CIO. It's a matrix. Very similarly, the way the lawyers at all the agencies report to their commissioners and to the corporate counsel, or the communications people at various agencies report to their commissioners and to the city's communication people. And then you have an opportunity to basically build sort of an understanding of what's happening across the city and create standardization, create rules, and get people all on the same page, particularly with AI. But in order to support that process, we should have 6 or 7 people who have done large-scale digital transformation, maybe in the private sector, 6 or 7 former government officials who actually know what these gnarly problems are, and spend a year actually together with the other major offices of the city, really looking at these structural problems. I'll give you one very strong example, which is civil servants. We're not providing professional development for them so they can understand how to use AI to help them do their jobs.
Right. Right.
In fact, I was going to suggest, if I had a chance to talk to the mayor during the campaign, that he should announce a public education campaign for AI in which we educate the public about AI, how to recognize deep fakes, how to use it. Will it take my job? This is a technology that's transformative, and for New York City government not to be utilizing it at its best potential and also protecting New Yorkers from its worst, then we're failing.
On the protection side, Assemblymember Alex Boris has introduced something called the RAISE Act that would require the biggest AI companies, I guess it's aimed at the private sector, to publish and follow safety and security protocol, do risk evaluation, handle privacy concerns and other things that people are worried about. Is that, would that be, is it too soon to start putting those kind of gates around it?
Actually, I think government does have to play a role in regulating AI, and right now we have a challenge between the Trump administration and the states in terms of trying to regulate this. But if the bureaucrats in government don't actually even understand the technology themselves, how are they going to write the policies?
Mm-hmm.
So we have an education process we have to go through.
Yeah.
But let me just say one more thing. There's a potential for AI to do lots of bad. The only way to really fight bad AI, if you lacking regulation, is to build lots of good AI. And for government services and for non-for-profits, the opportunity for them to use the same tools that the capitalists are using on AI gives us an opportunity to level the playing field and to help us shift power.
Give me an example of where, I mean, I've seen one example of artificial intelligence. We keep saying AI, artificial intelligence used to improve people's lives in government. And I believe it was through the community college system where there was an AI program that was looking at different databases and assembling profiles of students, and it could flag when a student looked like they were at risk of dropping out, long before anybody else could detect it, because they were using attendance and income and whether or not they'd done well on their previous semester's classes and that sort of a thing. That struck me as a pretty good use, but I think most people use AI and it's really just like sort of a smart search program.
Yeah, they use it. Most people think of AI as ChatGPT, you know, being able to ask it questions and it gives you a response, but AI is far more powerful than that. I'll give you an example here in New York. The New York City Department of Health collects millions of pieces of data out of the sewer system every day trying to track pathogens, the next COVID, the next bird flu, measles. They're trying to build a predictive models where they can use AI to give them an advanced warning, an earlier warning system for those kinds of pathogens.
Sure.
But they have the data scientists and data architects working in the Department of Health. We don't have data architects and data scientists working at other agencies.
Right.
That, you know, talking about AI is like talking about the penthouse. If you don't have a foundation and you don't have an elevator, what's the point of talking about the penthouse?
Okay. Well, this is some food for thought for one of the many transition committees that are supposed to be laying out what this next administration is going to do. But this is a great topic, and we'll be following up on this. Thanks so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Okay. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, we'll talk about an effort to move New York's presidential primaries come 2028 to Super Tuesday. That's weeks or even months earlier than when we normally have our primaries. We'll bring you those details in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
In Focus with Cheryl Wills, a weekly show discussing decisions and potential solutions for issues making an impact in your community and your city. If it's important to New Yorkers, then it's being talked about here. In Focus with Cheryl Wills, Sunday mornings at 10:30 on New York One.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Two milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Last week, 2 state lawmakers announced legislation that would move New York's presidential primary in 2028 to Super Tuesday. That tends to be months earlier than what New Yorkers have grown accustomed to. It is traditionally the biggest day nationwide for primary elections and caucuses in the lead up to Election Day in November. Upstate political reporter Jack Arpey has the details in this report.
Presidential contest to be the most powerful elected official on planet Earth. Why wouldn't we want New York to be on a date like Super Tuesday?
State Senator James Skoufis is co-sponsoring an effort to do just that. He argues moving New York's primary to Super Tuesday will get the Empire State back in the game. New York's primary has been in April or June since 2012, and the contest has been essentially decided at that point, without any actual campaigning taking place with the exception of 2016.
Mathematically, by then it was over. There was no way that Hillary could not win at the convention by the time the campaign came to New York State.
Skoufis has given the state's role as a Democratic stronghold in the general election, moving the primary is one of the only pathways to ensuring voters drive candidates to campaign here.
Right now, they don't really have to do that.
And pay attention to New York issues, as is the case with other early states like Iowa.
Eventually, presidents that win in November, they pay attention to those issues because they were in Iowa for months trying to win those votes. New York can center ourselves in such a way.
Jeff Weiss, elections and redistricting expert and professor at New York Law School, argues it would raise New York's stature.
New York will become a major player. We'll see more focus, more campaigning, more money put in New York, and it will raise the ante for candidates of both parties.
But the move would also have to be approved by both national committees.
The parties have not yet set their final rules, and it shouldn't be that difficult for New York to move its primary from an April, May, or June date to a March date.
Skoufis says he believes the legislative support is there to pass the bill necessary to move the date in time for the 2028 election.
Already a lot of interest, a lot of support, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get this done early on in session. Certainly it is realistic.
Jack Arpey, New York One.
It is time for a break. Coming up, I'll bring you a preview of this week's episode of my podcast, You Decide, where we break down Governor Hochul's re-election bid and the potential challenges that she faces next year. Stay with us.
We have so many ways to stay connected. A single touch can bring us closer to the families we love, the friends we know, and the city we share. And Spectrum helps us keep connected throughout the day, every day. Including more ways to watch New York One as a Spectrum Internet customer. Watch Spectrum News New York One on the Spectrum News app, available on all your favorite devices.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month, as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day with in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As we told you earlier, the race for governor is already stealing the political spotlight, with competitive primaries looming for both the Democratic and Republican Party candidates. Running for re-election, Governor Kathy Hochul now faces a primary challenge from her own Lieutenant Governor, Antonio Delgado, and two allies of President Trump. Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman and upstate Congresswoman Elise Stefanik will face off in a Republican nomination primary. On this week's episode of my You Decide podcast, State House reporter Bernadette Hogan and Politico's Albany bureau chief Nick Reisman both joined me to talk about what we can expect next year. Here's part of that conversation. Let's frame the politics, broadly speaking, the way it usually goes. And then I want to talk about some policy with you about what's going to actually have to get done for New Yorkers. Generally speaking, the formula for Democrats and the reason they've held the State House, I guess, since 2002, or that election, 2003, for the last quarter century now, almost a generation, is that they win in the cities, right? They run up huge numbers downstate, including in the suburbs, or they do pretty well in the suburbs, as well as, say, Buffalo, Syracuse, you know, Rochester, and the rest of it goes red, right? So you've kind of got a formula where it's going to be downstate plus upstate cities versus the whole rest of the state. Is that a sort of a fair way to put it?
Right, except now you also have this weirdness where people have moved out of the city ever since the pandemic, right? That's why for example, Hudson Valley congressional district that Mike Lawler represents, that's why he was told by the White House, don't run because you're one of the only Republicans that can keep and retain this seat. Because so many people have moved out. And the politics, you know, it has slightly changed, but at the same time, you know, the governor has to work on connecting herself to some of those policies, like, you know, saying she made things more affordable, did a child care tax credit, did the phone ban. Are people connecting her with that, and how does that assist her?
Right. And Long Island is really the bellwether here, right? I mean, and that is why, for a lot of Republicans, especially in Nassau County, why Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman's candidacy for governor is so intriguing. Yes, it is a shot from half court right now to win the governor's race as a Republican. You have to essentially depress the turnout in New York City. You have to have sufficient turnout in upstate New York, run those numbers up big as a Republican, and then really, really win the suburban counties. That's really difficult to do. But if you're a Republican, say, running down ballot as a county legislator or a town supervisor or a county legislator, you're going to have to make sure that you've got a strong top of the ticket next year. By the way, all those local elections, they're going to be in even-numbered years outside of New York City going forward. So Republicans would like to see a strong suburban candidate in some instances, and that's why Blakeman potentially has some wind at his back going forward, and it's why Hochul needs to be so careful about not alienating the suburbs, a part of the state that she really really hasn't been able to make many inroads with over the last couple of years.
Right, and off of that, if you look at the Tom Suozzi special election, I mean, Hochul was non-existent before that, and as Suozzi was campaigning. They didn't want her on Long Island because she wasn't good. That's, talking to the strategist there. She wasn't good for those races. And with the Blakeman entry, already talking to some of these Republicans on Long Island, they're really excited to have somebody that, number one, is one of their own, but then could also possibly pose a challenge to the Democrats that are holding on to their congressional seats by really thin margins. So all politics is local. And the governor, again, the favorability ratings and the name ID, it's lower than she'd like in New York City. It's lower than she'd like on Long Island. And she's trying to parse or figure out the situation that Mamdani was able to figure out policy-wise, but then also just connecting younger voters, people that are online a lot. So maybe not just younger voters, but I'm just thinking back to this Forest Hills Stadium event that Mamdani was at, that Hochul also got on stage at. And she was nearly booed off stage to chance of tax the rich. And, talking to one of her people, they said, well, listen, we kind of wanted to test the waters and see what it would be like to get her in front of a crowd that she normally wouldn't be able to get in front of.
I remember that. And she said, I hear you. She didn't say, I agree with you. Yeah. She didn't say, I yield to you. She didn't say, let's talk. She's like, I hear you. And that's about it. Well, so before we go any deeper into the politics, we've spent so much time talking about the mayor's race down here in New York City, because that's what we were supposed to do. But let's talk something about the sort of the statewide politics. And this is perfect. You're the Albany bureau chief. You've got a ton of experience in upstate. You have a lot of family upstate. You're a sort of a quasi-upstater yourself in a lot of ways, or you know what's going on up there. But, I mean, what are the economic challenges? Because every 4 years when the governor's race comes around, we're right back to the same thing. And I check in on the numbers that I like to look at around, loss of population, how are the industries doing, what are the investment opportunities and so forth, what are the industries that are doing well, and it always looked pretty bad. But what's the, I guess, the question up there that Governor Kathy Hochul, who herself, being from Buffalo, is in fact an upstater. What does she have to deal with?
I'll tell you the big wrinkle this time around. It's yeah, sure, depopulation remains an ongoing concern, but the tariff war that Trump has launched against Canada is a major issue for some of these border communities, by the way, which includes Erie County and the city of Buffalo, where Hochul's from, and where there are a lot of voters who live.
Niagara Falls, right?
And you've got a number of concerns from people who live in these communities, who do a lot of international trade. Some of them even work in Canada for their day jobs. They've got family in Canada, but there's a lot of cross-border trade that goes on with our neighbor to the north. And the American tariffs on Canada have created a significant problem for a lot of these communities. Just take tourism, for example. In Elise Stefanik's own house district, a lot of Canadians come down and spend time in the Adirondack Park, for instance. If you're in the Adirondacks in the summertime, half the license plates are from Quebec. And half the people on the trails are speaking French. But that is less and less the case now because of this tariff fight that Trump launched. And so I would not be surprised if we see Hochul going forward in the election to make that a major component of her pitch to upstate New Yorkers, especially in these rural communities that might be predisposed to voting for Trump, to voting for a Republican, to try and take a second look and say, well, look, if you're a farmer, you are not benefiting from this tariff war that the president launched.
Right. The other thing is jobs. I mean, hey, Nixon ploys, that's good. But
yes, it is.
God. But, you have the problem where young people grow up in these cities, say Syracuse, for example, where my family's from, but then they all leave. I mean, they go down to the city, or they just can't get competitive salaries, or they're able to work remotely, but for, say, a law firm in New York City paying city wages. It's a really big problem. I think it's the economy, right? You go an hour outside of New York City, you go up to Orange County, or I'm going on my way up to visit my family towards Albany. I mean, it's like Appalachia. It's impoverished. And the economic development question and the money that's gone to some of these towns, clearly you don't really see it. You have some outliers like Saratoga County, right? But even Albany County, I mean, the state put forth a couple $100 million to drive some economic benefits. And, you're not really seeing it. I mean, crime will be an issue for Hochul, but again, I think it's jobs and the economy. And the big question will be, okay, you talk about affordability, but it's not it's not connecting.
Well, you know, here's what's interesting is every 4 years, again, we go to the Republican convention, we go to the Democratic convention, and the Republican convention, they list a lot of these things, the depopulation, and they blame it on the Democrats, which is fair because Democrats are in power. But then I'm waiting to hear what the alternative is, right? And it's like slash taxes. Well, we've done that. There was a point where Andrew Cuomo said, if you go on a SUNY campus, your taxes will be zero.
Tax-free New York.
The investors,
Startup New York.
The investors stayed away in droves, right? I mean, it just didn't. It's not that. You're not going to tax your way out of this situation.
No, and it's also like, Nick can probably speak more about this, but like the cost of just doing business in New York, like the unions, right? I mean, it's more prevalent in New York City, but like it's very expensive to open a business. All the regulations. I mean, there's often the parallelisms between like going across the border over to Pennsylvania, where it's, you know, one could argue the economies are roughly similar, but it's not as heavily regulated. There's just like a lot of laws and like cumbersome aspects there.
And the one thing that they are trying, they have been trying to take advantage of over the last couple of decades now is this kind of large-scale industrial policy coming from the federal government. If, say, the federal government decides we're going to spend a lot of money on chip manufacturing, well, then let's build a chip manufacturing plant in Clay, New York, outside of Syracuse. Or let's do a big tax credit program for constructing solar panels in Buffalo. By the way, that was in Elon Musk.
That was a boondoggle, right.
But then you run into ideological issues, right? Because that costs a lot of energy, which is anti a lot of the energy goals. The climate law of 2019. I mean, you want to do a chip manufacturing company, or you want to do, say, for example, like Chobani, in Utica or outside of Utica.
The yogurt maker,
Which, to make it completely green or you know, not reliant on dirty fossil fuels, it would cost the company an arm and a leg. I mean, it wouldn't even be worth doing business.
You can catch the full podcast episode wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on New York One's YouTube channel. It will also air on New York One this Saturday night at 9 p.m., followed by the latest episode of the Off Topics on Politics podcast. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks so much for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You've done at the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything.
Hey, brother, be careful.
Movies.
I've got this condition where I don't feel pain.
You're a superhero.
No. Series.
There was another murder in the building.
Sports. Reality.
Here's to a summer you'll never forget.
News.
Here's a look at today's top story.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
Even more of your favorites with live TV.
Welcome into First Take.
Stream across your devices and watch anywhere. At home or out and about. It's the entertainment experience you've been waiting for. Streaming apps included at no extra cost.
What's got that, pal? Get a good look.
With live TV and on demand. All together, all in one place for you to enjoy.
It's whatever kind of adventure we want it to be.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for Onstage.
On Stage is presented by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Discover which Cadillac is